Sure, good to be with you again, Yvonne. Well, anything that comes out of the mouths of Russian officials all the way up to Mr. Putin on this particular incident is absurd. Trying to blame it on the Ukrainians because these these suspects allegedly were caught heading towards the Ukrainian border. That is after the Belarusian president said they were actually headed towards his border. There's just a lot of things that don't add up in their claims. The theory is still out there as well, of course, that this could have been a staged attack by the Russians, given that it took so long, for example, their security services to show up at that entertainment venue, and that it would be used as a pretext for Mr. Putin to not only clamp down further on internal dissent, but also escalate the Ukrainian war. But it needs to be said that this is a huge embarrassment for him, I think, amongst most Russian voters, because a big part of his platform was internal security, and this was a huge failure, obviously.
What does the evidence point to, or is this really hard to analyse as well?
It is hard to analyze, but the one thing we do know for sure is that the region that the suspects were headed to and where they were caught is pretty much an active war zone, and the Ukrainians have not only debunked the theory or the claim that there was any link with Ukraine, but they said anyone headed towards that zone either has to be suicidal or crazy. So that part doesn't add up as well.
What impact are these narratives having on Ukraine?
Well, look, as I sit here right now, we are under an air raid siren alert in Kyiv. It's the second one in 12 hours. And there is increased fear here. I have to say, I've detected it not only here in Kyiv, but also where I'm based in Odessa. The difference that's happening right now in the past few days is that the Russians are attacking not only in the nighttime, but also in the daytime. And the other thing is they're using hypersonic, supersonic missiles. Yvonne, is very similar to what I saw in Tel Aviv in November. When air raid sirens go off, people have less than a minute to go to the bomb shelters. And then that's a new phenomenon here in Ukraine. It's caused a lot of fear, a lot of worry.
Do you think things have changed since this Moscow attack in terms of Russia's strategy?
It has. The other thing the Russians are doing even before the attack, but I'm expecting they're going to escalate even more. I think they're going to possibly even do a new mobilization. But the other thing that's changed is they've returned targeting critical infrastructure. Hence, massive blackouts in major Ukrainian cities. For the first time on Monday, Odessa was totally in the dark. We have not seen that in a year, so that's affected many businesses. And the other thing, just quickly, Yvonne, underneath the surface that I'm seeing, it's kind of a death by a thousand cuts. As you're seeing some of the best and brightest in Ukraine, especially in Odessa, reevaluate their stay in Odessa and planning for a safer ground in Europe. And that's, of course, a huge loss to any economy.
And police in Kharkiv say Russia's using aerial bombs there. What can you tell us about that?
Well, what we're seeing mostly is in Kharkiv, especially, repeated bombings to the point where schools, for example, have been forced underground. They're building special classrooms underground to protect people. I just spoke to the Canadian ambassador yesterday. She was just in Kharkiv, and she could not believe the extent of the destruction. So the mix of bombs that they're using is the most important thing here, causing massive destruction. And of course, Kharkiv being so close to the Russian border, they have even less time to react to air raid sirens.
What have other countries such as the US and UK said about the Moscow attack and the current situation in Ukraine?
Well, first of all, the Americans have debunked anything that's come out of Russia's mouth. They actually warned the Russians in early March that an attack was imminent, and they warned American citizens to get out. But what the Americans really need to say, especially to the Ukrainians right now, is that we have your back. The $60 billion that is held up in Congress right now will come your way. It is looking, let me be clear about this, it is looking very bad for Ukraine right now. If that $60 billion does not come in, it's a possibility that within 2 years, Russia could occupy the entire Ukrainian territory. They need this so badly right now. I can't overstate it.
Michael BOCIURKIW, always good to talk to you. Thank you so much for your analysis.
My pleasure. Thank you.